Yo, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down this Thursday night football slate. We have the Lions versus the Packers. Should be a great game. Super excited to watch this here. $1 million up top to first place on DraftKings per usual. So I'll be talking through my favorite plays, how to attack the slate for tonight to get different to win that $1 million to first. Build out a potential lineup for you guys to use if you want, as well as my core plays at the end of this video. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get right into it. Make sure to check out my early look slate breakdown for Sunday. I'll have the main slate breakdown out either tomorrow or Saturday midday. But if we can take a look at the spread in game total, right now it's a two point spread favored to the Lions, even though they are playing in Green Bay, and then 45.5 game total there. So decent odds. So in terms of this game, as I mentioned, the big news that we were kind of waiting on was Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, and David Montgomery. If one or two or all three of those guys were going to be in or out. We got the confirmation that all three should be good to go here for this game. Aaron Jones expected to play. Christian Watson got ruled in last night, but he will be in some sort of snap count. And then David Montgomery should be good to go. So looks like we got two uh, fully healthy teams. Obviously, a little bit of an asterisk just because Christian Watson's on a snap count. Maybe Aaron Jones and David Montgomery are as well, but basically two fully healthy teams. So, with that in mind, I think the best option is to take a look at the snap count share, snap count percentage of these two teams. Now that we do have these guys back, so we can get a better understanding of who's going to be playing what in this game tonight. So, for the running back situation for week one, we saw that it was about a 50-50 split there between AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones. Now, AJ Dillon has not been efficient at all the past 2 weeks there without Aaron Jones. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of like a 55, closer to 60% snap share for Aaron Jones there. And then AJ Dillon goes down to about 40%, maybe even 35, and they do give some run to Patrick Taylor. But yeah, kind of expect at least a 50-50 between Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, and then maybe they mix in Taylor a little bit. But I'd give obviously the edge to Aaron Jones there. And then for the wide receiver situation, they haven't played a game with Christian Watson yet, but he will be the number one wide receiver. Obviously, there's going to be some sort of a snap count limit. We haven't gotten word on what that will be yet, so stay tuned for that. But with that in mind, he'll be wide receiver one. Romeo Dobbs will be wide receiver two. I'd assume Dobbs plays close to probably 70 to 80% of the snaps. And then this is where the water gets a little bit murky just because we have Wicks, we have Reed, and we have Toure, who probably will all play and get some snaps. I would assume Wicks and Reed will probably keep that same snap share count between the both of them. I would assume it probably drops down in between like 45 to 55% because they're going to give Christian Watson a good amount of snaps. So if I'd imagine it'd probably be Watson, probably let's just say 50% of the snaps. Dobbs about 85 to 80%. Wicks and Reed will be wide receiver three. They'll be floating between probably 45 to 55%. And then I do think Toure will probably get his snap share count cut in half. But I do think we can see him about 25%. So there are some options to take a shot on in this wide receiver room for the Packers. And then tight end situation, it's pretty much just the Luke Musgrave show. They do run DeGuara out there, but he is pretty much out there just to block. And then on the Lions side of things, David Montgomery is back. So we saw in week one that David Montgomery was mainly the bell cow back, 80% of the snaps. Jameer Gibbs was more of that kind of boomer bust play in the backfield in terms of just he was in there to kind of, change a pace, the big play ability. Running back, they did say they're going to ramp him up. So that's why he only played 27%. But I think going forward in this game here, I do expect Montgomery to be eased into it a little bit, not like a full snap count limit, but I think we can probably expect maybe a 60-40 split, Montgomery to Gibbs, maybe even closer to 55-45 or 50-50. So we'll have to keep that in mind. But yeah, Montgomery will be back. He'll be like the first, second down back, and then Gibbs is like the third and long, even second and long back. So I do think both are playable. The Gibbs price tag is not the best, but we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, it's pretty much just gonna be Montgomery and Gibbs backfield. As I said, they'll probably split evenly, maybe a little bit more to Montgomery compared to Gibbs. And then Craig Reynolds will probably see a few snaps. I don't think much, but yeah, that's really it there. And then for the wide receiver situation, It's everyone should be good to go for the wide receivers for the Lions. Amon Ra going to be playing most of the snaps. Josh Reynolds, wide receiver two, he'll play about 80%. Marvin Jones, as you can see, his snap share has been going down every single game. He has not played his first game; he was terrible. So his snap share went down to 52%, then down to 41, and then Khalif Raymond has been going up 27, 42, and 36. So him and Marvin Jones and Khalif Raymond are kind of splitting and vying for that third wide receiver spot there. So keep that in mind. But they're pretty much just running those four wide receivers, and that's it. And then for the tight ends, Sam Laporta, it's pretty much his position, about 80% of snaps. They do mix in some Brock Wright, but he's mostly as just a blocking tight end. So let's get into breaking down this game here and building out a potential lineup, going over the core plays. But right now, I'd say just if we're talking about like captain, who has the best yet safest ability in the captain for upside, I would say right now it is going to be David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, Christian Watson, even though he's on like a snap count limit, Jordan Love, Goff, Aaron Jones, and St. Brown. I do think Gibbs and Dobbs, AJ Dillon, um, Musgrave, Reynolds, and Khalif Raymond, and like Jordan, Jaden Reed. I do think they are like viable, but they're more like risky, dart throws in the captain spot. I think the one of the problems with me is I play super, super contrarian, and a lot of times it doesn't work. So I'm gonna try to be a little bit more chalky in terms of my captain plays. I always love to throw in like a Khalif Raymond or the tight ends as the captain play, and it's always just super, super risky. You don't have to get that risky and that contrarian on these slates to get different because you can just get different in the flex plays. So I do like going with a little bit of safer option here for the captain upside for tonight. And for tonight's slate, I do think it'll be more of like a mid-range build just because there's not a lot of value plays here. Like Torre will probably be he'll probably be chalk just because he's super cheap, 900 bucks. He will see some routes. Now, I don't think he'll get a lot of looks at all, but if he gets a few catches, 4 or 5 fantasy points, that really helps open up your lineup and allows you to pay up for another star. So that's kind of the thing there is besides him, there really isn't anyone besides Marvin Jones at, I think he's 2,000 in the flex position as cheap value. Otherwise, there's nothing until you get to the kickers. So it'll be interesting to see the builds for tonight. I do think it'll allow us to be a little bit more contrarian, a little bit easier. But yeah, moving on to this Detroit side, Amon Ra, obviously super safe flex play, great captain play. He should see around 10 targets, if not more. Super, super, super good wide receiver. Really, really like him. I think Jared Goff is a solid captain play for tonight. He is solid upside. Not the best on the road, as we can see. Where is it? Game log here. At a glance, as you can see, at home, he's pretty solid. 23 fantasy points so far for the 3 games this season, and at away games, 40 fantasy points. Like, and that's just his normal split overall. Like, he's not the best away from home, but still, he is upside because he throws the ball. He can rush the ball a little bit, get those rushing touchdowns like he did last game against Atlanta in the red zone. So I think he's a safe, or not a safe, but I think he's a solid captain play if you want to play him there, and a safe flex play. Jameer Gibbs with David Montgomery back, 9,600. It's just more so of an ownership play for me. Like if he's going to be pretty low owned just because of the price tag, David Montgomery back, the split backfield, I don't mind going to him because, he should get more run than the first game where he only saw about 27% of the snaps. You should see probably closer to 40, 45, maybe even 50. And he's a big play ability running back. He'll get targets out of the backfield. He'll get the rushing attempts. So I do like him a good amount um, because I do think it might be a struggle for Detroit to get some offense going, and they could look to him out of the backfield. So that's kind of my thoughts there with Gibbs. And if you go with that thinking, I wouldn't mind taking a shot on him in the captain spot just because he does have huge ability with that pass catching out of the backfield. Sam Laporta, as I mentioned, he'll probably be super, super chalky just because of his box score. People are going to love to box score watch, but I'd say pump the brakes a little bit. If you take out that big play, that one catch for 45 yards and a touchdown, that's pretty much half his fantasy points right there. And so then he got 7 targets for what, about 40? He had 7 catches for about 40 yards. So as you can see, a lot of his targets are not very long. The average depth of the target is probably like 5 yards. He gets a lot of unders, a lot of like short little curls, things of that nature. So I'm not saying he's a bad play, but at his price tag and probably at his ownership, I don't know if I'm going to go there, even though I love going to tight ends just because He's probably going to be a little bit too high owned for me. Montgomery, I'm assuming a lot of people are going to play him, because he's about $3,000 cheaper than Jameer Gibbs, which is fine. He's going to be a solid play. If he's good to go, I would assume he plays about 50%, if not more, closer to 60%, depending on how they kind of split up the backfield between him and Gibbs. So I think he's a very solid play there, 6,800. Don't mind getting to him, but you do kind of need him to fall in the end zone to be worth it, especially if he's going to be super chalky with his ownership. Josh Reynolds, I don't mind him. Did not see a target last game, but as we know, he played about 75% of the snaps, closer to 80%. He's a solid wide receiver. Does have some big play ability, but more so like when they get closer to the red zone, he's a big wide receiver. So they will throw him the ball, give him some looks. So I don't mind him there at 6,200. I think he's a solid play there. Could have an upside as a captain play, but obviously one of those risky captain plays. Same thing with Khalif Raymond. His snap share percentage has jumped up about 40% right now, splitting that wide receiver three position with Marvin Jones. And I like him. He's a big playability kind of guy. As you can see, 20, his first catch, he only had one catch in game one, but it was for 20 yards. He had three targets, caught one for 36 and a touchdown there in game two. And in game three, he caught another one for 22 yards. So he is a big play wide receiver, big playability. So if they need something, they will take shots at him downfield. So I do like Khalif Raymond a good amount, 5,200. He's a risky play, but I think he's a solid flex play. And then the kickers, Patterson, they're always viable, especially if you're going to play like Jared Goff and the captain. Wouldn't mind getting to a kicker there in the flex. And then Lions defense, you really need them to return, a pick six, fumble recovery for a touchdown, or run it back for a punt or a kickoff. That's really what you need is a touchdown from that defense. Otherwise, it's not going to be worth it unless it's just a super low scoring game and they get a ton of turnovers. And then below that, Reynolds probably won't play much, maybe 10 snaps or so with David Montgomery back. Don't think there's a need to take a shot on him. If you're going to take a shot on someone, I'd say it'd be Marvin Jones here on the line side. No targets the past 2 weeks, but he has been playing, as we saw from the snap share count. He's out there about 40% of snaps right now. Now, maybe tonight he sees even less or doesn't play at all. That is a risk, but $2,000 for a guy who's playing about 40% of the snaps for wide receiver three position. He is old, kind of dusty, but still, he's getting the playing time. He's $2,000. I don't mind taking a shot on him as some cheap value there for the Detroit Lions side. And that's really it. I want to get to Brock Wright. He's only seen two targets. That was the first game. He is out there, but he's mostly a blocker. So no real need to get to him for me on that side. And then for the Green Bay side, Aaron Jones. If he's not on some sort of like snap count, limits, I love Aaron Jones. Probably my favorite play across the board, just because of his ability to run the ball as well as catch the ball out of the backfield. Great play there at his price tag. Really solid. The offense will run through him. The offenses look terrible off running the ball, rushing the ball because of how inefficient Patrick Taylor and AJ Dillon have been. So I do think Aaron Jones are going to lead on him for tonight's game. Jordan Love, I really like him. He's been super efficient. Obviously, not the best game there, and not the best overall in terms of just like percentage wise, but just efficient wise. Three touchdowns first game, three touchdowns the second game. Only won this last game, but he does have some rushing upside, which is nice to see. 9 for 39 in a touchdown. I can expect 2 to 5 rushes a game from him, maybe like 12 to 30 yards a game in terms of rushing, which is solid. And he does have some rushing upside in the end zone. So I think he's a super solid play there. I don't mind playing him in the captain as well because he does like to pass it out to different guys. They do have Christian Watson back, so there's a lot to like here on this Packers side. Dobbs at his price tag 8,800. I think it's a solid play. Like if he's going to be pretty low owned because people are going to take that shot on Christian Watson, even though he's going to be on the snap count limit. I don't mind playing Dobbs. Like he's a really good receiver. He's got great hands. And he's looked really solid over last year and so far this year. So I do like him. They do look to him in the red zone as well. So even though he's pretty expensive, I do think he's a decent play. Christian Watson, I just hope we get news on kind of what that snap share and that snap count limit will be. Because if he's going to be playing about 50-60% of snaps, I don't mind taking a shot on him at 8,200. Super fast, big playability, wide receiver, would look really good, even if he's on a limit. But if it's going to be closer to like, let's say 40% of snaps, I don't know if I would get to him at that price tag. AJ Dillon, he's going to be more of a contrarian play there. Should see about 10 to 12 rushing attempts, maybe a target or two out of the backfield. This could be his, week one is kind of what you're going to get from AJ Dillon. I'd say about 10 snaps or 10 attempts rushing, maybe a few targets out of the backfield. So More so, you just kind of need him to pop off in some of those attempts or get a touchdown to be worth it. So it really comes down to ownership for me for AJ Dillon. I can see a lot of people not playing him because he's pretty pricey. Aaron Jones is back. He hasn't been efficient. That could lead to a solid spot for us for AJ Dillon if we want to get contrarian. Luke Musgrave, I do think he'll be popular as well. He's playing a ton of snaps. He saw 8 targets last game. I'd say pump the brakes a little bit. Aaron Jones is back. Christian Watson's back, so they will command a good amount of that target percentage. But I think it's a solid play. Like for the tight end position, it really comes down to if you're going to play one, I just play the I'd probably play Laporta, but it really comes down to ownership. Like if Laporta's going to be heavily, 10, 15, 20% higher owned compared to Luke, like I'd probably rather go to Luke, even though probably has more competition in terms of targets. Now we get into kind of the wide receiver 3 area for the Packers. We have Reed, we have Wicks, both seeing decent amount of targets. I expect those targets to drop down a little bit. If I had to give the edge, it'd definitely be to Reed. But I'm a little bit safer. But yeah, I mean, I do think both will be involved. Not my favorite plays, but they're definitely there in the mid range. Kickers are always in play. Carlson hasn't seen a ton in terms of field goals, but he's there. He's playable. Packers D, solid defense. If you want to get some, once again, you need a touchdown. That's my thoughts there. Patrick Taylor probably see maybe 10 snaps. Don't think it's worth it to go to him. You really need him to break off a huge catch out the backfield. And then, as I mentioned, Torre, he will be kind of the value play of the night just because he's $600. He'll probably play about 10 snaps or so, maybe a little bit more. And yeah, I do think a lot of people will get down to him because it'll allow you to pay up for some other studs here in this game tonight. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there for this slate. In terms of building out a potential lineup, um, let's just start with this: Aaron Jones, Jordan Love. Actually, let's take out Jordan Love. Let's go to Amon Ra. I do like Khalif Raymond there. Where do you go? Right there. Um, so Aaron Jones, I think in this lineup you'd probably want to get to another. Let's go to Christian Watson, 4,400 left over. As I mentioned, not a ton of value. So let's just throw in Toure. I think he's an okay value play for tonight. 8,200 left over. You get to Laporta. Obviously, with this lineup, you're getting a little bit contrarian by not playing one of the quarterbacks. But yeah, I don't mind it. For tonight to get a little bit different to try to win that $1,000,000 at first. And with that in mind, let's just throw in. Let's just get super weird. We'll throw in AJ Dillon. And obviously, you have 1,200 left over. You could pay up or pay down for someone. But yeah, that's kind of my initial thoughts there for this lineup. In terms of core plays, I think it's going to be for me, it's going to be Aaron Jones, Khalif Raymond, and probably Amon Ra. So obviously not super contrarian with the core plays, but it's just, Aaron Jones should be heavily involved. Same thing with Amon Ra. And I do like the big playability there for Khalif Raymond. So those are kind of my thoughts there for the potential lineup, the core plays. So hope you guys like the video. Hit that like button and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.